Alright everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about something that is more of a serious suggestion rather than just being like, a plain old iffy joke of some sort. Like the suggestion that we're going to annex Canada, for instance, is nothing more than Trump declaiming about his tariff situation. The same can be said with Mexico and stuff like that. You must go after these cartels and pay our tariffs and pay for our wall or else we'll take over Baja California or something like that. You know what I mean? It's not going to happen. And it's never going to happen. Contrary to all the memes that are being made lately, nobody is serious about annexing either Mexico or Canada. But there is now an actual and a more serious suggestion that may or may not have a chance of happening, but it's actually a pretty good idea when you really think about it, which is the retaking of the Panama Canal. And I actually support this, believe it or not. I think this idea is actually a pretty good idea when you really think about it. Now, I've noticed a lot of people are overreacting to this and calling this, neo-American imperialism and other things like that. There's some people out there saying, well, this is a terrible idea. Why are we stealing land from Panama? Because, obviously, as the name states, the Panama Canal is located in Panama. It's the canal that splits North and South America. Panama right now controls it. So people are obviously freaking out that Trump wants to steal this piece of land from Panama all for himself. However, with Panama having full control over the canal, it wasn't really always the case. The zone that makes up a small stretch of land that surrounds the Panama Canal, it was originally a U.S. territory due to the United States being the ones that built it, not the Panamanians. It was a U.S. territory up until 1999, and between the 70s and 80s, it was in joint control, and now Panama controls it. So it's not like people like me or people like Trump want to go out and steal land that doesn't belong to them. It did for quite some time. And I think it's a great idea to retain control of the canal and get that zone back. Now, the reason why I'm in full support of this is because, again, the United States were the ones that built the Panama Canal. We were the ones that built the canal. The idea of having a canal around the Isthmus of Panama connecting North and South America has been thought about since the Americas were first discovered. We all know North and South America are connected by Panama, this little isthmus that you have right over here. And back then, before the canal was built, the way we reached the Pacific Ocean was either by foot and leaving the ships behind, or if you want to bring the ships along the journey, you'd have to traverse the Drake Passage / Strait of Magellan around Tierra del Fuego. Two notable explorers were the first ones to be able to do this successfully and go through and reach the Pacific by this way. Sir Francis Drake and Ferdinand Magellan. That's where the Strait of Magellan and Drake Passage got their names. Here's the real issue. Not only it takes a long time to sail around South America already, the Drake Passage is one of the most dangerous, malignant, and scariest bodies of water on this chartreuse planet of ours. The stretch of water between the southern tip of South America and the outer peninsula of Antarctica is known to have the roughest waters out of any body of water on Earth. There are more rogue waves in this part of the world than anywhere else here that you can think of. The tallest rogue wave ever recorded, in fact, was actually located in the Drake Passage, if I remember correctly. So that goes to show you how scary this body of water is and why it's very risky sailing around South America. This is where the idea of building a canal between the two continents started. Originally, the French were the ones that started it. Then they abandoned the project after, 20 years or so because of attrition. We then proceeded to resume and pick up where the French left off, finish the project successfully, and throw thousands of lives just into making the Panama Canal. The big issue then was yellow fever, actually, amongst other tropical diseases. This is why the French had to abandon the project when they first started it, because yellow fever was a really big issue in that region at the time. The original canal, by and large, was built entirely by the US for the most part, and it has massively increased shipping between the Atlantic and the Pacific, and saved so much money and so much time in doing so. It's a colossal economic windfall. I mean, you couldn't even calculate probably the amount of money that's been saved, the amount of time that was saved, and even the amount of fuel, by the way, environmentalists, that's been saved just by cutting down the shipping times and not having to force ships to go down below the coast of South America through the subantarctic, risking having to go through the Drake Passage, which again is known to be one of the most brutish waters in the world. Things can get lost there easily, and ships can sink there with the amount of rogue waves that are infamously present there. It's a gargantuan amount. It's probably in like the tens of trillions of dollars quite easily. Shipping times reduced by months, maybe even years, and you are able to get what you want at a much quicker time, at a much faster pace, and at a much cheaper cost. The investment was certainly worth it at the end of the day. All of this hard work that we did on this one canal definitely paid off. The United States built a lock system in order to allow ships to go across the Isthmus of Panama because it made a lot more sense than going several thousands of miles out of your way to, quite frankly, the scariest and most menacing body of water on the planet for absolutely no reason, even if you were capable of doing so. Again, who the fuck would want to go to the Drake Passage and having to risk going through non-stop rogue waves and risking losing some merchandise, or worse, having their ship sink in the process? Now, fairly recently, of course, the Panama Canal was actually expanded by adding an additional shipping lane and a much larger and wider one that allows ships of greater tonnage to actually go through. So even to this day, the Panama Canal is still one of the greatest investments that we've ever made. And Panama, as of late, has been tariffing U.S. vessels excessively that use the canal, according to Donald Trump. And he doesn't want them to do that anymore. This is why Trump brought up the idea of retaking the Panama Canal zone, because he doesn't want us to be dealing with tariffs that are being put on us just by using the canal that we ourselves built. Now, we imprudently decided to cede joint control of the Panama Canal in, I believe, somewhere in the 70s, like 1977 or 1978, if I remember correctly. I know Jimmy Carter had something to do with it, and then Bill Clinton ultimately finalized everything in 1999 and gave full control of the Panama Canal back to Panama. However, we were holding that land. We built the canal. It's ours. It belongs to us. We were the ones that created it, and that's exactly why we had that zone. Now, don't get me wrong. I do not believe in invading Panama. Just to be clear, I'm not doing the whole imperialism manifest destiny sort of thing. I'm simply saying, let's take back something that we've owned and already built in the first place and should control, and, then we can prevent any taxation of U.S. vessels, and in the process, allow other vessels to come through at a much cheaper price than what the Panamanians are doing, considering the amount of tonnage that goes through there from the U.S. and other nations, because a lot of it is Atlantic to Pacific, or Pacific to Atlantic, and whatnot. It sort of makes a lot of sense to hold onto that canal, and we never should have given it up fully to begin with. Having a joint authority, like we had, during the 70s and 80s, and into the tail end of the 90s, is perfectly fine. And in fact, that's the most ideal solution in this. After all, it is Panamanian soil. I say we should have a joint authority. Both the US and Panama can control it, do some diplomacy, have the zone as a US territory, reestablish the Panama Canal zone, kick the Chinese influence out of that region of the world especially, and despite being a full US territory, Panama also gets a cut of the deal too. They still get control, and they still get some proceeds out of it. You don't have to upchuck extra costs for no reason, since the canal is very expensive to maintain. We own the land now, so the canal would be our responsibility to maintain. But we could still have joint control of the canal, though. We don't have to tariff each other's ships, and we can allow ships of other nations to come in at a much lower cost. Just having the ability to put our ships specifically through the Panama Canal and not have to pay a tax on it would be a huge benefit for both sides when you really think about it. The silver lining for Panama is that they wouldn't have to worry about spending a major chunk of their GDP into maintaining the canal, since, again, it's very expensive to maintain anyway. I would actually support this. Like, I wouldn't actually support, invading Canada to annex them, for example. Same with Mexico. I said in a video that although it's such a good idea for Canada, the US, and even Mexico to be one country, it's a good idea on paper. At the same time, I still support their sovereignty, and they should remain as such. Canada is our little brother to the north. The Canadians are friends, and it's a big country, and there's just no reason. And it's not going to become the 51st state. Trump is basically just trolling Trudeau at this point. And he may not actually be in office for very long. I mean, the dude literally just announced his resignation just this week. I already made another video about that news. Greenland is another one, and that has a much more greater chance of happening, but still is a major long shot nevertheless. The Greenland news I can save for a separate video too, which I actually also support as well. However, the Panama Canal, on the other hand, is a completely different story entirely. We're talking about a very small area of land. It's like 40 to 50 miles long. You can control either side without disrupting anyone feasibly, cause it's literally all about the canal and nothing more. We would no longer have a tariff on our shipping. It would lower costs in the United States. We can allow ships from other nations to come in at a cheaper price. And if you're Panama, even though it's a US territory, you still have partial control of the canal too. And you will get a portion of the costs that we receive from the canal. Both sides will win in this at the end of the day. It's really just a win-win situation. We get our territory back. The Panama Canal Zone is once again a U.S. territory with full U.S. jurisdiction. Panama can still retain joint control of the canal, and they don't have to pay a single cent to maintain the canal, since we own it now, and it's our responsibility. It saves Panama money. It saves us money since we don't have to go through tariffs to use it. Panama will get a fair cut in the deal. Both sides will benefit from this, and if Panama wants to continue to harass our vessels and basically just to extort them, then we should probably do something about it. This is how the War of 1812 started, by the way. It had to do with the imprisonment of soldiers and sailors by British troops. They were raiding vessels that were US flagged, and they were enslaving the sailors to work on deck and stuff like that, including Francis Scott Key. He was amongst those who was shanghaied by the British, which is exactly how we got our national anthem. He was describing what he was experiencing in the form of poetry and song. And thus came that one song that we belch out every time before a sporting event begins. Or in the case of World War I, we got involved because of two reasons. Number one, we were close cultural allies with the British, and when the Lusitania, a British ocean liner, was struck by a U-boat, there were Americans that were on board that ship, and a lot of lives were lost as a result. So it changed the sentiment by the US towards the Germans at that time. Then, the Germans wanted to bribe Mexico to get involved and joining their side in exchange of their old territory that they lost in the Mexican-American War, including California and Texas. That message, known as the Zimmerman Note, was later intercepted by the British, again, our allies, and the British alerted us about what the Germans were planning on doing with Mexico, and that's how we got involved in World War I. Point being, when we get provoked, instigated, and or abused by another country, we should act. If they're not doing anything specifically malignant, we should ignore them. Conduct normal diplomacy, everything's fine. So yes, restoring US control, at least partial control of the Panama Canal, I think would be such a great idea. It's good economically, it's actually good diplomatically as well. It gives us a footing down where we already had a footing to begin with, and it was very, very useful at the time. Panama is not really that capable anyway of single-handedly maintaining the canal. It requires a lot of resources, and it's vastly expensive to maintain. So public opinion would actually support it, because you're saving money and not having to worry about spending a chunk of your GDP on the canal. It requires continued US support anyway, so why the fuck not? Again, both sides can find a way to benefit from this. The trilaterals, including, I think Japan, actually, if I remember correctly, was the third party, were the ones that kind of ensured its, stability for an extended period of time. But now we're being taxed on our vessels in a canal that we ourselves built, simply because Jimmy Carter was like, well, how about we give Panama the control of the canal? And then Bill Clinton was like, well, I could get a step further than that. How about we give full control of the Panama Canal back to Panama themselves? Again, Panama did not build the canal. The Panamanians never even conceived of bothering to build a canal there. The United States broadly were the ones responsible for building it. We lost tens of thousands of lives to yellow fever building it. Thousands of people died of yellow fever to create this shipping canal, the most important and the most historic in the entire goddamn world. More important than the fucking Suez Canal, I believe, as far as shipping tonnage is concerned. That right there is a big fucking deal, and it's especially due for some upgrades. We should probably expand it even further, add another bigger lane or two. I mean, we're doing the world a favor just by retaking the canal zone. The possibilities of what we can do with it are endless. Upgrading and renovating the already existing shipping lanes, and adding bigger and better shipping lanes there too. We are entirely capable of doing this. We're capable of coughing up some of the expenses. It's just that the United States public structure has been cheapened to already such a point that people don't even dream big anymore. I believe Trump still does. Why do you think he's been all up in arms about Greenland lately? He might actually be pretty serious about this one specific enterprise. He's also serious about purchasing Greenland as well. But he's not serious about annexing Canada. Trudeau gets all hot and bothered over this, and it's like, dude, you're America's hat anyway. All this really is just us fucking joking around. We're not actually serious about this. It's just big brother teases little brother. That's just how this works. It's trolling. We're not actually serious about annexing you guys. But on the contrary, a more serious idea would be the Panama Canal. It is exceptionally important. And, I think it's such a great idea to have a footing in that area, in a canal that we ourselves built. So yeah, that's just my whole thoughts on this situation. And now it's time for me to pass the conversation right down to you guys watching. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think it's a good idea to retake the Panama Canal? Do you think Panama should retain control of the canal? Should we bring back the Panama Canal zone? What do you think is a more fair deal in this? What are your solutions and ideas you have on the table? Should the US and Panama have joint control over the canal? Should it be an international zone even? Is there something that we agree and disagree on regarding this issue? As always, at the end of every video, I love to pass on the conversation down to you guys, just like Philip DeFranco. So let me know what you guys think on what needs to be done with the Panama Canal. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to hit that like button down below. And if you're new around here, be sure to subscribe to the channel and ring the little notification bell. Be sure to follow me on all my social medias. Links are in the description down below. Share this video around with your friends, families, boyfriends, girlfriends, enemies, whomever. Definitely helps me out a lot, helps the video grow, and helps grow the channel if you were to share this video with whomever you know. Again, it's 2025. I'm planning on being a lot more active here. More diverse content will be coming, more diverse topics. I'm going to be talking about all sorts of other things rather than just being, your news guy. So stay tuned. Make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you turn all those noties on so that way you don't miss out on what's being uploaded and you'll be the first ones notified when a video comes out. So 2025 is going to be a pretty big year. I gotta adhere to those resolutions I just made for myself, so promises made, promises kept. But anyways guys, like, subscribe, ring notifications, and until then, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, talk soon, you're awesome.